So welcome to another Wargame review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today we played A Few Acres of Snow, which is an older game. It's 10 years old.
It's an older game, but it still checks out, sir.
And it's from, it's from Treefrog Games. Mm-hmm. I have no idea what else they've ever published, but that's who made this one.
Designed by Martin Wallace, and we've played several of his cool military-themed card-style games, like Lincoln.
Which was very good. I enjoyed that one.
And now this one. Very, very good.
Yes. And
interesting.
This is a two-player French-Indian war game. And before you comment, because I know you're thinking about it, you're thinking, oh, but the game's not balanced. It's got a broken strategy in it. Don't bother typing that, because I know that it has that in there. I don't know what the strategy is. I didn't read it, because that's not why I play games. Okay? Not here to find the one thing that if you do it, you have to commit so hard to it, and it is so ahistorical and unsportsmanlike. Like, I don't play a game to, like, that's not why I play a game like this, right? I just don't care.
And I know you don't care. The comment, though, it's called the Halifax Hammer.
I believe that's what it's called, yes.
And we were discussing it because neither of us really know the strategy.
Yeah.
And we're sitting here like total novices trying to understand it. How's that going to do anything?
Yeah, because the person who discovered the thing played the game 50 times to have to figure that out. So just don't. Like, don't bother commenting that this is broken. It might be. It may have...
Well, I'm even trying to understand what it possibly could be. Because you don't place your troops in there.
Yeah.
It's not like you build... You build a disc or a settlement, and then you put a fort in, and then you can chock it full of 8 or 10 guys. Yeah, you don't put guys out on the board.
I don't know.
Until there's a siege.
Stick a bunch of guys in reserve list. I don't know. So, like,
I don't understand. After playing this time, I don't understand how that would work.
That might be a problem with this game. I don't care. I like if someone does that to you, they're a douchebag. Like, they're proving to you that this game has a flaw. Okay, a lot of games have flaws. I couldn't care less.
Don't do that. Play it to have fun and try to figure out how to defeat it the way it's supposed to be defeated.
Yeah, because I enjoyed this game. I thought it was great.
I did too.
We jawed back and forth across the frontiers.
We had some arguments about the asymmetrical victory conditions, as is always the case between the French and the British in these French and Indian war games.
Yes.
It's always the way it is.
Yep.
British have a crapload of dudes, generally.
Yep. I agree.
But they don't have the ability to get the victory points without significant investment.
It's hard to utilize those guys effectively.
And then the Native Americans are basically allied with the French, and they kind of run around destroying everything.
Doing lots of raids and settling where I can.
And to me, we had the real argument about Quebec. You're like, oh no, it's the same thing. I'm like, bullcrap, it's not the same thing. You have better intrinsic value there. Your VP victory point thing can be up to 12. It starts at 6. Then if you do a disc, which I think is a settlement.
Yeah, so it starts as a settlement, I believe.
Oh, it started as a settlement. That's even worse.
Yes,
now that I think about
Quebec
that.
and Montreal started as settlements. I believe they did.
I just happened to raid that before you got your first fort there.
And then I built the fort because I was like, "Oops, just lost 6 victory points."
Because there's, you look at it: Louisbourg, Port Royal, Quebec, Montreal, and then Three Rivers.
Yep.
All told, that's like 30 victory points, right? 8, 20, 26, 34. That's like 34 victory points. That's a lot.
If you have settlements in all
for 4 places. That you start with settlements in 2.
Yes.
If you look over at the British, they don't have anything near to that. They have 2 places, Albany and Deerfield, that are worth 4. Everything else is 2. Which is cool because I can spread out here for the most part with impunity.
It's fairly safe over there, yes.
It's very card intensive. You got to do a settler, you got to do a ship or a boat. So it takes a lot of cards and a lot of turns to get that done. They're just not worth the victory points some of these places are. I do have a few more discs than you.
You also have a few more settler icons to be able to do that.
Right, I have
far fewer, so
you have to actually
doing that's very difficult.
Invest in those. So there is a lot of asymmetry in the way not only the sides kind of start, but also what those victory conditions are like.
And the decks are also asymmetric as well, and the icons on the cards are also asymmetric with regards to the locations as well. Yeah. So they play very differently. Like, if you switch sides, this ain't chess. You got to learn a whole new faction, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
The rules are the same, but the types of cards that are available to you and your strategy is very different from side to side as well.
So all in all, this is a deck builder.
Yes.
Right? It is a game where you start with your draw deck. It's a standard draw deck that has 8 or 10 cards that represent basically your locations. I'm trying to remember what else was in there.
You had just your starting locations.
Yeah.
I had just my starting locations.
And like an Indian.
One regular unit and one trader.
Okay.
And so it's your turn. You have a hand of 5 cards. You have 2 things you can do. You
2 actions.
You do a card and it says do the thing on it. Okay, that thing allows me to take an action on the board. Or I might add a card. I got a big stack of cards.
Draft a card.
You pick one of them,
put
it into your discard pile. Eventually that discard pile gets shuffled into your deck.
Yeah.
Very much your regular deck builder style, which was refreshing.
I actually really liked that part. Because you had to make those tough choices about, do I just invest? And the worst part is...
So I put a bunch of stuff in there, and it's like, oh, it's not as good. It doesn't come up as often.
It doesn't come up quickly, because when it goes into your discard, you still got to get through your regular deck, then reshuffle. It could be 3, 4, 5 turns before that stuff's going to come up.
And it's classic... So those are classic deck building themes and issues, which I enjoy, because you've got some decisions to make. Do I bother or not?
Even a governor card in each deck where you can put a couple cards back in your supply.
From your hand.
From your hand. Has to be from your hand.
He has to come up with some bad cards as well.
What I did with mine, the one time I did it, was I saved a couple of those crappy cards. Remember the ones that I put in that I really shouldn't have put in because it was not the best choice?
Yeah.
I ended up putting those, so I kept them in my hand until that card came up, and then I got rid of them.
Yeah, see, I pulled mine. I had mine, and I had a home support card. Pulled an extra bunch of cards. I'm like, now I've got some bad ones I can give away.
That home support card was also really cool.
Yeah, it
just allowed you to draw some cards.
It's expensive. There's one of them, but it's one of those things where you're like, I'm going to invest in that early.
What does it cost, 5?
I think that's 5, yeah. Which early game can be a lot of money.
Getting money is also very challenging.
Yeah, you can trade.
There's
a trader card, and you use that, and then discard a number of fur icons, and you get 2 coin for each one. But
home support.
You have to have the right hand to be able to make that really strong. You trade with 1 card, you get 2 coin. Doesn't feel good.
Nope.
Or some of your home cards will have a printed value on them, and you're like, cool, I get 2 money from the taxes there, but. That card has a number of other
settlers,
icons,
a boat,
which are a
ship.
You need those for other things.
Money. It had a money icon on those. That was the other thing. That the interesting way that each of us got money. You started with 2. Didn't you start with 2 traders?
I started with 1, but I got my other one in very, very.
And I don't have another one.
Oh, you don't?
I just have. I don't start with 1, and I just have the 1.
Okay.
So that was kind of the way between that and piracy, which is not easy. Piracy is not easy.
And it drops off
because when the deck gets diluted,
and
you get 40 cards in it, those they aren't going to come up together.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because I got my money from the printed taxation value on New York, Philadelphia.
And how many times early game did you tax, and then I just pirated it?
Which was kind of funny.
It's cute.
We were kind of joking about it. I liked that. I liked how each of us had to get money differently because I noticed piracy kind of dropped off the earth.
Yes, it does.
And then you were focused
as your deck gets bigger, you're less capable of doing it.
So I did like that aspect, how to develop your economy and how to develop your deck so it's going to make you some money that you can use. I also liked the fact that you had to match the icons with the different icons on the board to do settlements and to move
across certain routes.
Yeah, I liked that part. The rivers, the paths, the roads. There were only a couple of roads, but some of those cards had carts on them, and you had to have that card to move on those, so it makes it a little challenging.
And there's not many carts.
There's not.
I don't know if I saw a single one.
I have a couple.
Yeah, you do.
Here, my starting Philadelphia.
I don't think in my entire game I saw a single one of those.
Maybe you're not supposed to.
Or maybe I have to get these cards that have them. Maybe. Yeah, I only ever used boats and ships.
Yeah.
That's odd. That's interesting. I didn't think about that.
But the deck building is really cool. There's also this Native American neutral card.
Yeah, old green cards.
Fortifications, getting some extra Native Americans, and then some settlers, which I'm also wondering, maybe I should buy those settlers so that you can't get them.
They're very expensive, though.
They are 7.
And buying that
just to keep it away from you.
Is that an optimal thing to do? And that's what deck building is,
Yep.
right? It's optimization of, I would rather have me with an amazing deck rather than like
a
hurting
crappy
my
deck that's just
hurt
keeping
you
it
a
away
bit.
from. But I will say, maybe buying one of these is a good strategy for the British. Just one.
You did buy one, I think.
No, I did. I bought ships.
I bought at least. I think
You bought
I
both
bought
of them.
Yeah,
Because
I
you didn't
needed them.
have. You just didn't have.
I think I have like 2 settlers on my starting
And I have
cards,
like,
maybe.
I want to say 4 or 5. 3 or 4.
Maybe I've got that. I definitely had one in Quebec and maybe one in Montreal, maybe.
So that's the
not a
cool.
lot.
That's the cool part about that deck building. You've got to make a decision. You really only had one starting,
and it felt like it. So I was forced into buying those. It's a lot of money to get the colonials over to start settling and expanding.
I have 4: Philadelphia, St. Mary's, New York, and Boston. So that's interesting. If you wanted to be a dink, as the British, maybe I should have bought 1 settlers, because then you're only.
Yeah,
it's going to be very hard for you to do your economic expansion.
But again, it's all that money, and
it's a lot.
Hurts your deck.
I'd rather buy a 7 power artillery or infantry.
But that's what this game provides you. It is a deck builder at its core, and so you get all those deck building choices and decisions.
Yep.
And then it plays out on the board. You're trying to get control of regions. It's a point-to-point map, and then you're trying to develop those regions into these larger towns, which are discs, and those double the victory points for the areas that are there. And if you put out all your discs and you're not under siege, the game ends at the beginning of your turn. I think that's most often the way that's going to happen.
Is my guess.
Because
we were both very close to that.
Yes, we both were. And because the auto-victory conditions are, if you hold Quebec, and that's so
it's
hard
impossible.
to do.
I'm not sure that ever would happen.
And maybe that's part of that stupid
Halifax
broken
hammer.
strategy. But if you do it, you're a loser. Don't do it.
Once again, I'm still not sure how that's going to work.
Who knows? And then the French would have to win by controlling, I think, either Boston or New York. I can't remember if it's both.
Never going to happen.
Like, it's just, doing that is very difficult.
Yeah, it's just too far over there.
And you can sail by ship.
Yep, you can.
But that's also insanely hard to do.
I guess it could happen, but that's going to be tough.
Yeah, I don't know. So, in my estimation, you're going to win with these kind of economic development victories more than not.
Yeah.
There is a siege mechanic, and that's the thing. It's technically a war game. It's about the French-Indian War.
I felt
you
that
have military units that can do sieges, but that is really
such a minor.
It is a minor-ish part of the game, because what the sieges really do, yes, you can capture an area from someone, but it is such a significant investment of your cards and time to do that.
Well, and it's just really hard to get those powerful units in your reserve so that you can use them, because one, they cost 7 to buy.
You gotta buy them.
Then you put them in your reserve.
And you do that because you don't want to just
you don't want
have
them
a crap
clogging up your hand
the whole time.
Then you got to pay to get them out.
Then
if you got 5 cards there, that's a 5 spot.
Then you got to have your launching off card to do it, and the transport to get there.
It's hard.
And you've got to then start putting your units in, and then there's this.
And that's every form of combat. It's not. There's not a siege and a field battle.
Yeah, that's the only form of combat.
It's all the same thing. It's considered sieging.
Yeah. There's no actual like battles.
I mean, we did it twice.
We did it once.
Well, we did because I started it, realized the rules were different than we thought.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I can't win that, so I backed up. You attacked. Also, you couldn't have won that. I can't remember why we did that.
I did that to suck up your cards.
Right, because I had like 8 cards in my hand. Yeah.
So
and hold me.
And that to me is what sieges are really about.
You're drawing resources away.
Sieges are a way to force an opponent into pouring resources into something, both actions and cards, that they may not want to do, so that you can do some other bits and pieces.
Yeah.
Like I put a couple guys in there, and I'm doing that. Like, I don't really care if I take Fort William Henry.
Sure.
It would be nice.
Yeah.
I don't think I actually care. But you need to put stuff in it to defend it.
Yeah.
And all the while you're doing that, I can settle with impunity. I can do little raids here and there. And that's why the British can initiate one siege, the French can initiate one siege.
And that's it.
That's it.
One siege.
You can never have more than one siege or battle going on.
Yep.
And it's kind of like there are these like whirlpools and like suction areas of just resources to force you into doing a thing so you don't lose an area which could be worth points or could have some strategic value.
And the way those sieges are set up, it's going to take 3, 4, maybe 5 turns to be successful. Typically,
because you
can only play 1 or 2 cards
at the beginning of your turn.
Yeah.
You can't lose a siege at the beginning of your turn.
Yeah.
The opponent can win it at the beginning of their turn. And so it's very interesting the way that works, because I put a guy in, you now can't win. You put a guy in, it's my turn, I now can't win. I put a guy in, like...
It's just going to go back and forth.
And if it stays in this 0 to 1 grey area in the middle and we both don't commit, nothing happens. And you're just invested in there.
Yep.
Which is...
And there were some strategic mistakes made, I think, by me. You had several reserves, and I had reserves. I could have raided those or ambushed them.
Ambush those.
And they would have went away. I probably should have done that. I kept trying to raid towns and villages.
But that's also extremely
It's also
valuable.
important. Yep.
And it's what's more valuable. I can like bob a town that goes from like a 4 to a 2, and then it's really hard to build back up. Yeah. Or do I kill a guy who then in the future might not be able to launch a battle?
Yeah.
There's tough decisions to make.
Yeah.
And the reality is this game has some naval travel that you can do, and really there's like 2 or 3 major routes that you're fighting along.
Yeah.
And even then, the decisions can be tough.
Mm-hmm.
The box touts the playtime is like 90 minutes.
I don't agree with that.
I think it's a bit longer than that.
About 2 hours, I think.
You can also,
because it can just keep going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth.
And there's some thinkiness to some
stuff. And really what ended the game, it was interesting. I kind of got deadlocked where the cards I had in my hand, I really couldn't do anything else.
Yeah.
And you, like 2 or 3 turns in a row, were preparing your hand to throw down the last settlement or town.
Yep. I had Detroit like 3 hands to do it.
And it was interesting. If I had a little better hand movement, I may have been able to put mine down or take another one away. It was just interesting the way it ended.
Well, and it ended. I put down my last town, and it came back to my turn. You only had 1 left to place, and you would have ended the game.
Yeah.
Like it was.
But I didn't want to end the game because I was looking at him going, I don't think I had the victory points. I was trying to take one of these bigger ones away from you, and then I would have probably ended it. But it's hard.
It was still pretty close at the end.
With 8 points.
Resources, right?
Yeah. I think it's a very good game. I'm going to be honest. This is not for everybody because a lot of people don't like asymmetry. A lot of people don't like the style deck building. Anytime you talk about cards in a war game, people get upset about it sometimes.
Yeah, and this is not a traditional war game in that sense. It doesn't do a lot of the things a lot of war games do. Now, because the deck is the core of this game, I think someone who's a really experienced deck builder is probably going to do quite well at this game.
I would agree, yeah.
Just being
because you've got to get these better cards. You got to get card advantage. Those are kind of things that you're thinning out your deck at the right times.
Like my brother plays a lot of deck builders. If I play him a deck builder, I know I'm going to lose. Yeah. I'm just in it for there's some maths and some
some maths.
Yes, mathematics is plural.
Okay.
But he understands the kind of counting of these decks, trying to keep them slim, be able to do the things you want to do. I'm a bit more fly by the seat of my pants, so it's much more likely I'll get put a few bum cards in by accident, and the things slow down. I'm not as efficient with those. But I do think someone who's good at deck builders, this is a deck builder.
Yeah,
the deck pushes some stuff around, but if you're good at cards, this is going to be a game that you're probably going to be quite good at.
Yeah,
as well.
Well, I think my statement would be I actually really enjoyed the game. Yes. I did. It was a little frustrating.
Show me a French-Indian war game
that's not. And I've played the British before in other games, and it's hard.
Yeah.
And it seems easy. You're looking and go, I got all these resources.
I got all this power.
It just doesn't work that way. I also, strategically, some of the mistakes I made was never really threatening Nova Scotia at all. That was pretty dumb.
Whilst that's true,
I tried in Halifax,
and I eliminated Halifax a number of times,
at least twice,
because I'm like raid, yes please.
Well, I kept saying to myself, if I could just get a fort there, I can now jump off and maybe cause some more trouble, and I just never could get it. Part of it was my deck started to get a little bloated.
Yes.
I put in some of those bad cards at the beginning. Had I thinned that deck out at the beginning and more focused on that, at least getting a presence there, it might have went different. So, once again, that's another strategy I'd like to try.
Yeah.
I think there's some things
there's
that
a lot to
I
explore.
could go for and have an interesting time. It was a good game.
Yes. I will show you the board and how this works, and then we'll wrap up with some final thoughts. So here's a look at the map. We've got the British side here and the kind of French-Indian side up here as well. And you have some holding boxes for your various cards. These are available cards. You have Empire cards and location cards. This is kind of like the cards that you can pull from to put into your decks. You build your deck from these pools. You have location cards that match all the different locations on the board. And your Empire cards are more kind of action-oriented. You can use fortifications to protect yourself or give a defensive bonus. These provide a little kind of boat canoe icon. Governors allow you to do a certain thing. Traders give you actions. These are the kind of more of the engine-based parts of the game. Whereas the locations, you have to have location cards to perform certain actions in areas, like doing a settle action, or to conduct a siege. You need to siege out of an area, and you have to have the cards to be able to do that, to build forts in areas. On top of that, so you can play them for the areas, they also have a number of icons at the bottom. So you can have furs to trade with. This gives you money if you have that area and you play that card. Money, ships allow you to do naval moves. And there's some carts which allow you to travel on the 2 roads in the game. Oops. So you have a little starting hand of cards. And you draw 5 cards. It's very traditional in that sense, right? If you play Dominion, it's kind of very much like that. And then you get 2 actions on your turn. You can... and there's a huge... It's actually quite a large menu of actions that you can do. And it's all printed on this little play aid here. You got aggressive actions, which are kind of like doing sieges, raids, or ambushes, those kinds of things. There's expansive actions. You can settle new areas if you have the cards and the roads to do so. Or you can grow areas. You can kind of expand them from discs to cubes. That gives you more victory points. Or there's some financial actions. You can like just play this for the 3 money and get money. And there's a bunch of trade and piracy. Or you can do a bunch of card management, which are like, you can draft 1 card. You can take 1 card from an area card or an empire card and you put it into your discard pile. Eventually it gets shuffled into your deck. You now have this card that you're able to use. You can discard 1 card. Any other card you discard along with that, you have to pay money for. Money's pretty hard to come by. There's a few other bits and pieces that you can do. So let's say the British have 2 actions. They're going to play this to do 3 money. Goes into the discard pile. So they get 3 money. They give you these little plastic tiddlywinks, which is fun. So you get 3 coin. That's my first action. My second action, I'm going to, and this is real late game stuff. Most of the stuff wouldn't be here. So let's we'll remove a few of these. So like my first action, I think you start with squares in some of these maybe. I'm not sure. For example, if I wanted to turn, I can do St. Mary's. So I've got the St. Mary's card. If I want to turn that from a square, from a cube to a disc, I have to play the name of the thing. Because I'm already there, I just need to play a settler. So I play those 2 cards in combination. I remove this, and I get that. So this 1 victory point, which is this little purple hexagons, they're the victory points. This 1 victory point is worth 2 victory points for me now. Great, good job. That's my 2 actions. I refill my hand to 5 cards. So I draw 2. I need 1 more. Your discard pile gets shuffled, and you put 1 in there, right? So if you'd bought cards, those start getting cycled in there. That's kind of, you know how deck building works. You know that, right? You're a smart person. The crux of this game, to me, is the mixture of these empire cards for the actions and the location cards. So you need to draft these cards into your deck to be able to access them. So if you want to get to Richmond, you need to fish out, you take a draft action, and you get the Richmond card, it goes into your discard pile. So then you have to play through your whole deck, that cycles back into your deck, and now you might be able to get that comes up. But when you want to settle Richmond, because no one's there, you have to not only have the Richmond card, you have to have a settler card, because it has a little settler icon on it. We play a settler. And the first time you're going there, you need a boat. You need one of these boat icons to sail up the river, or to kind of row up the river to settle that. So, especially early on, your expansion requires a lot of card investment to do it. And so, the French player is doing a similar thing. You start off with kind of a few bits here. You're trying to spread out along this frontier, go all the way down to Detroit, and it requires, you need boats, you need cards, and once you start getting, and now once you've done that, when your Richmond card comes up again, let's say you perform that action, when your Richmond card comes up again, you're now hoping to either have a settler with it, so you can turn it to a disc, or maybe you've bought a fortification, you can build a fortification, but again, you have to have that Richmond card with it. I do a Richmond, I do a fortification, and it says here I have to pay 3 gold. Hey look, I got that 3 gold earlier from taxing those guys in New York. Then I can place this black disc. This is a fortification. This means it's immune to raids, and it's much harder to siege and take away from you. So, again, the card economy in this game is very intense, because it usually takes at least 2, a lot of times 3 cards to actually do something expansive that grows you or strengthens you. And so, more than other deck builders, I think it's really easy to mess yourself over by drafting too many cards too early. You're gonna you got to be reasonable with how you expand, but once you've kind of really secured an area, that card keeps coming up, and unless it's got some good icons on it, it's gonna be kind of bum for you. It kind of fills your hand, and a lot of the cards have good stuff on it. But when you start getting out into the frontier towns, Fort Halifax does nothing for you. This card, if you had a fort there, you can use this to launch an attack from, but that's about it. And so it starts to be a little bit of dead weight in some of those. Cumberland's the same thing, and a lot of this stuff that's kind of in the middle, the game doesn't punish you, but it makes you make those real tough choices of the strategically important things that are going to be able to launch you into the enemy to do attacks don't have much economic value. And the stuff that has a lot of economic value may not have the strategic value that you need when you are launching the attacks. There's some stuff that's very interesting in how the cards are made up. I really like that stuff. But a significant amount of this game is in expanding your colonies and towns and cities and getting the points from those. You can and will do a few sieges in a game, but not many. The combat in this is done with raids more than it is with conventional armies. And I like that this is a war there weren't that many huge, massive pitched battles. There were a number of them, but it wasn't like in other wars where it was just battles all the time, and that's what drove it. So we kind of talked about it. To do a siege, let's say, I've got the French here. Do I have Ticonderoga handy? No, I should do, but I don't. What do I got? You have to have a card from the space you're launching your attack from. So the French would need the Ticonderoga card to be able to do that, because that's what connects to it. And you have to have, so I've got Ticonderoga. I have to have this in my hand to be able to do it. These are joined together by a river, so I also need one other card that has one of these boat symbols on it. And then I also have to have one card that's not this one, that has military symbols on it. So let's say I've got my regular infantry as well. So that's one, and this is one action. There's a lot of stuff, but it's one action. So I'm Ticonderoga, I go along the boats, and I've got a regular infantry. So what happens is I take my blue siege marker, and I'm sieging Fort William Henry. And if you've watched Last of the Mohicans, you know how that ends up. So when you initiate a siege, there's these 2 siege tracks. I'm the French player, so I'm using the French siege track. You can only ever initiate 1 siege at a time. There's 2 markers, 1 British, 1 French, and they are limited. You can only do it. You have to break away from one to start another one. So it starts at the 0 space. The defender always gets a bonus for being the defender. They get 1 pip. If there was a fort at Fort William Henry, which they've mistakenly not put 1, this would go down another 2. At least that's how the rules read. I'm pretty sure that's the case. If there was any intrinsic defense, so Boston has a little defense symbol, Quebec's got 2, it could go even further. But luckily, they don't have any of that, they've just got the 1. And what I do is then, so these go into the discard pile, my regular infantry goes into my French siege box up here. I got a little holding box where this is going to go. It's kind of up top of the map, I'm not sure we can see that. So I go up 2 pips, because I have 2 military symbols. A siege can only be 1 at the beginning of your turn. So what I might do, that was 1 action. If, miraculously, I happened to have another light infantry card in my hand, I could reinforce a siege. I can put 1 card in, and I could go up 2 pips. That's my 2 actions. It goes to the British player's turn. The British player checks their sieges. Again, you can't lose a siege at the beginning of your turn. You can only win a siege at the beginning of your turn. So the British player is like, scrambling for things. Do they have any things? Do they have any kind of military forces in their hand, and what are they going to do? So what you can do is, they've got one. Cool. They will commit it, and there's the British siege. They're committing it to the French siege, the blue one. They go up 2 points towards them. Now it's back in the grey. When it comes back to my turn, I also cannot win the siege. And it's this escalating commitment of who wants to put how much in, how much can you bleed the other person dry before someone's going to win it. Or no one's going to win it. These sieges are very, very protracted. Or they can be, at least. So they do that. Well, guess what? It's in the grey. They don't have to worry as much about it. They don't have to commit 2 guys like I did. So then they might take some other action. It comes back to my turn. I check for siege. I did not win because it's in the grey. I'm then going to have to commit something else to it. And now I've got, troops are real expensive to buy. So now I might be like, well, I've only got this militia card in my new hand that I drew. So it's only going to give me 1 pip. And then do something else. And then, or I might go real hard. If I can go as hard as I can, I might do it twice. And then I'm up here. And then the British player's like, it's not worth me wasting actions to do that. They might sacrifice this area, in which case it would switch hands at the beginning of the French turn. So they might just take some normal actions and say, sod it, you can have it. Or they keep committing stuff. They might have some big artillery piece or a couple regulars that move it back and forth. And that's the conflict mechanics. It's the commitment of forces. You're not rolling any dice, there's no CRTs or anything like that. It's just this vacuum that sucks up your resources, your forces, because you have to have these in your deck, and when they're in your deck, they don't do anything other than sieges. So they can clog up your deck and hand real easily if you're not really doing a lot of that stuff. They're also incredibly expensive to have bought in the first place, which used a lot of your cards and a lot of your turns to do that stuff, and then to have them at the appropriate time. All that's to say, sieges are tricky. And it might be worth just saying, I can lose an area and it's fine because I need to save some stuff to defend in more meaningful places. Or you might go really hard and commit a whole bunch so that it's not worth the other person committing. And they're just like, yeah, okay, give it up. Or everyone's doing a little bit and it just sucks everything in and it slows everyone down. And your powerhouse might just grind to a halt as you're embattled in this big siege, which feels quite thematic in the way that it's supposed to, I believe. So, but that's the fight. That's really the fighting. The only other combats that get done is if you're recruiting these Native American cards. You play this. You pay 1 money to use it, right? You gotta pay them, otherwise they won't do it. And you can raid or you can ambush. So raids are you find an area where you are. And 2 spaces away, you can attempt to do a raid. I'll say, I'm going to raid Fort Halifax. Great. The opponent has to have a card that blocks it. And other raiders block, and so do fortifications. So if they had a ranger's card in their hand, they would play it, and it says, block, 1 ambush or raid. Cool. This doesn't happen, but we both play our cards. I wasted the money. If they don't have anything to block, the raid is successful, and this degrades 1. So it goes from this disc down to this cube. And that can be very punishing in areas where you've got victory points. I got raided in Quebec because I'm an idiot, and I didn't protect it well enough early in the game, and that was my own fault. Or if you've established a new little beachhead, that first time you commit into Albany, if the French are already at forts at Ticonderoga or Oswego, they start raiding this stuff, and boy, it hurts. Because remember, you had to play the Albany card, and a boat card, and a settler card to get there. That's 3 cards, and to have all of that together, to synchronize, to be able to do that, very, very difficult. And you just get raided, and it's kind of a feel-bad moment when that stuff happens. And so then, well, if I know I'm doing that, do I hold a fortification in my hand that's also kind of clogging up my hand, and I'm less likely to have the cards I need to do the building actions and all this other stuff? There's a lot of stuff to consider. And once you start building these black discs, which are the fortresses, they're immune to those raids. So you feel a little bit more secure about Richmond. You feel a little bit more secure about Ticonderoga, about Port Royal, things like that. And they also provide you a significant bonus if you do end up getting sieged by a conventional force as well. But there's a whole bunch of moving pieces, but a lot of it's with this card play. And if you've played any deck builder, this will be very, very familiar to you from that standpoint as well. With the stuff that you play out on the board is interesting. It kind of reminds me in a little way of Time of Crisis from GMT, in the sense that you've got a very traditional deck building game, but you're using that to drive some conquest and historical battles and conflicts, and it does that well. The game plays well when those two things mix together. So that's kind of how this board works. That's how the game functions, generally speaking. And what we'll do is we'll wrap up with some final thoughts. So that was a look at the map. As you can see, it's so. I love this artwork. Start off with a positive thing. This is not a negative thing, but this game, it shows its age a little bit in the components, right?
So originally 2011.
Yeah, 2011.
The dual or trilingual version that we have.
Yes.
2012.
But so I think all that is that they never redid the rules.
Yeah, they didn't change graphics.
But you get the kind of the faded tan color of the parchments. We've talked about this. It reminds me of some of those old Euro-style games like Puerto Rico.
Which we love. We played Puerto Rico to death when we pulled 2013, 2014, 2015.
It's a little bit nostalgic playing with this in a way.
Yeah.
Like the cards are kind of the longer shapes and they're a little bit thin. I've played lots of games like this. Just game production has skyrocketed in the last 10 years.
Well, and rules. I think while the rules weren't terrible, there were some minor clarifications needed, but not bad.
Yeah, so
play aid was pretty good.
The rules are written for people who play more traditional kind of Euro-y style games when these were written. It's a lot of text, and it's descriptive, right? There's no bullet points in the same way that you get in other games. It's not as telegraphed as typical war game rules are these days. And so just know that. You can read the rules. Yeah. It's not a particularly complicated game. The play is pretty good. Yeah. It tells you what all the different cards do, and then all the actions that you have. This is like the thinnest piece of
it's very thin.
Paper,
but I actually liked the play aid. I think I used it quite often, trying to figure out what was going on and how to do things that I wanted to do.
You do want to read the rules before you could. Some play aids you can kind of play off the play aid.
I would actually say you could play off this play aid.
So the only reason I say that you wouldn't is you do have to reference the rules a number of times because some of these things aren't as explicit.
The details of the cards.
Yeah, like it says, take a Native American card from the other player if they have one. Mm-hmm. It doesn't on the play. It doesn't tell you if it's in their hand, in their reserve, in their deck. It also doesn't tell you if it's a neutral one or one of their home nation colored ones, right? But in the rules, it does say that.
Yeah.
It's very clear in the rules, and the play aid doesn't. So read the rules. You can then play off the play aid very easily.
Yeah.
So that's a big bonus for this, and I think that's why this game was as kind of, I don't know, I feel like it was fairly popular back in the day. I don't know if it was.
I mean, I've heard a lot of good things from a lot of
people. Enjoy it.
Yeah. I'm sorry that it's taken us 10 years to play it, but
we looked at it at the local gaming store for how many years?
A lot.
And it just never happened. And then I picked this up in a trade, I believe, a couple of years back.
And it sat on your shelf
for
2 or 3 years.
But at least we had it. And then we playing Bayonets and Tomahawks, got a little bit of a taste for it.
Yeah, we're like, let's pull
So
it out.
like, let's do it. Let's finally do it.
This by no way, shape, or form compares to Bayonets and Tomahawks or Wilderness Wars.
Very different games.
But it's a very cool game that I think has its place on your shelf.
Yep.
If you like the French and Indian War.
Yeah, this is a much more accessible game.
Yeah, you could, I think,
sure.
play this with anybody.
Yeah,
I really
it's a
do.
deck builder.
Yeah. It's not so military heavy or so war game clunky that people are going to be turned off by it.
Yeah, it's a really nice medium between a lot of those things.
Yeah.
Like, the engine is something that a lot of people who don't wargame are familiar with, but people who do wargame probably enjoy the theme and some of the tactics of moving pieces around, converting areas, trying to protect them, build forts, do sieges, and things like that. So,
and frankly,
nice
I had fun with it.
Yes.
I mean, when I was playing it, it was enjoyable. I enjoyed what we were doing. I enjoyed the tension. I enjoyed the back and forth, trying to steal your Indians with my, what was that called, Indian agent? Or
yours was different to mine. Mine was a priest. I was conversing.
Yours was a
with
priest. I want to say mine was called
Indian captain or something. Indian leader. Wasn't
Indian
it?
leader, and it was a British guy who just spoke.
Yeah, he was.
He just spoke the language of the
Did
tribes.
you have one of my favorite cards, and I put it in my deck very early on, which was a mistake. Was my Intenda. Did you have one of those?
I did not.
Okay. That allowed me to pay money to just pick one card from my
Which is
discard
very
pile
cool.
and put it into my hand, and that's how I was able to end the game.
That would be very cool with like your siege mechanics that are going on.
Yeah.
If you had just bought a new soldier, you could play that, pull that out,
Pull it out.
and play it. That would be very valuable.
Toss it in. Yeah.
But the way you used it was, I think you pulled a card that you had just played to build like a presence or whatever it's called, and then you
Yeah, I think I'd
finished it off with a settlement.
I'd already had Detroit, but
Okay.
I'd had the Detroit card in my hand for like 5 turns.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I was like, I know that this is gonna do it.
Yep.
But I didn't have a settler.
Detroit's forward. Dude.
And I'd used Quebec for some money or something pointless. And then I was like, all right, I'm gonna pay the 2 money, get that back, and then I can settle Detroit. And that's what did it.
Yeah, that ended
But
the
like,
game.
there's little bits and pieces of combos that you can get into.
Yeah.
But like any old deck builder, sometimes you get a bad hand, and you just have to discard a couple of cards, and it does not feel fun.
The rating mechanic in this, I think, is very cool. It's simple.
Very simple.
You can block it. Like, if you use a Native American to raid, I can use a card to block it.
Which is identical to like, things like Dominion, where you have
Yep.
those, I play my bandit, everyone discards a card unless they can show
Yep.
a moat. Oh, you show a moat, cool. Right?
Yeah.
It's so, and it's abstracted in that way, which I'm like, sure, it's fine.
Yeah.
I had a bunch of them. It was cool to kind of do a bunch, but it's, I don't know, again, felt kind of like a classic deck builder in that sense. It was enjoyable to do some of those things that we don't do very often again.
I enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. I would play this again right now if you wanted to. I mean, I thought it was that fun and interesting. So,
and it doesn't take 3 hours.
well, but it doesn't take an hour and a half either. I feel like this is going to be a 2-hour game.
But that's much more palatable to a lot of people than like
a 3-hour game.
B&T's 6, 7, 8 hours
Well,
longer if you're doing the campaigns. Right?
Oh yeah.
Like
but those are really in-depth war games with a lot of processes and.
But not everyone wants that. Some people want to play this.
Yep.
It's
and
got a cool historical theme on it.
You get the historical feel and move on and with a nifty. There are some people that are going to turn their nose up. Oh, a deck builder. Well, you know, if you're doing that, I feel sorry. I feel a little sorry for you.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Because just because it's a deck builder, you're going to turn your nose up. There's a lot of games out there that are deck builders that are very, very cool.
But right, and conversely, also, guess what? It wasn't made for you. You're not the target audience.
Don't play it. Don't worry about it. If you don't like it, just watch the next video. We got plenty of them to watch. So anyway, I liked it. Had a good time with it.
Few Acres of Snow from Treefrog Games. I don't know if this is this still. Do you think this is still produced?
I have no idea.
I don't know any other.
I
game
am
that
sure there
Treefrog
are
Games
dozens
does.
of copies somewhere on Amazon or
there's
Miniature
a bunch
Market.
on for trades on BGG. I was on there looking up some bits
Yeah.
and pieces for the dates and stuff, and there's like a bunch for sale, and they're like very reasonably priced.
Okay.
So I don't know if you can buy it new anywhere. You might be able to. I just don't know.
Yeah.
That's all.
Well, this is a game I've actually always wanted on my shelf. I think I talked about it in the video where I was guessing your collection, because this one came up and I guessed it.
Yep.
My wife couldn't remember how to say snowshoes. She was like, those things on their feet. And I'm like,
She was like, those tennis rackets
and I was
they're
like,
wearing,
okay,
right?
this is A Few Acres of Snow. But I've always wanted this game. I remember when we first started getting into historical games, I was like, ooh, this is one I want. think I had trouble finding a copy that was reasonably priced.
Yeah, there was one at the Game Preserve, and it was like
I remember it was like $80.
It was a lot,
and I never would buy it. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I'm glad you've got it. I'm going to take it from you and just put it on my shelf because you don't.
I love the artwork on the.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's a cool looking.
It's iconic. It's really, I don't know.
I wish the cards matched that. I feel like this is just okay.
Yeah, they've got I don't know if it's a slightly different style.
Yeah.
But yeah, I enjoyed the game. It was interesting because I always play the British in these kinds of games,
and we slipped.
So playing the other side was very different style, very different style of game, honestly.
Yep.
But A Few Acres of Snow from Treefrog Games. Check it out if you're interested. There's plenty of copies out there available. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I've been Alexander from thePlayersaid.com.
And I'm Grant.